Greetings, I'm Professor K, and welcome to this part 2 of your 3-part video series on how we go about completing the Capture the Flag exercise for Lampiao. In this second video of the series, we're going to look at information gathering, we're going to do some enumeration using a number of tools, and if we have time, we'll do some exploit analysis. So to begin, I'm going to open up a terminal, and we're going to change locations over to the working folder I currently have showing on my desktop. I want to go ahead and change directory, and you'll notice now that my prompt shows that I am inside of that folder on my desktop, and this is where I will be conducting all of my work. Anything that I have to download, anything that I need to run, will be ran inside of this working folder. Now the next thing I like to do is to discover the assigned IP to my Kali machine. So to do this, I'm just going to type in ifconfig. Hit enter. You'll notice that my assigned IP address for my Kali machine, this is the attacker, is 192.168.0.29. Now that's important to remember because we're going to need that information later on. You can go ahead and clear the terminal, and we're back to a clean prompt. Now the next thing we need to do is a network discovery. And to do this, I'm going to use the Net Discover tool. And I'm going to follow that up with a space and a dash, small letter I, and then I'm going to tell it which interface I want it to use to go out and discover what's available. And that's going to be my Ethernet 0 interface. I'm going to go ahead and hit enter. And in just a moment, we'll come back with the results of the scan. Now the target that we're looking for is identified as PCS System Technic GmbH. That's always going to be the case when we're using VirtualBox. Now, if this was on a VMware machine, it would come back and this would say VMware. So I know that this is the target, and the target's IP address is 192.168.0.30. Now, this is my information, not yours. Your information will differ. Make sure that you take note that we are not going to be using the same set of IP addresses for my Kali and your Kali. My target and your target. Those IP addresses will differ. To stop this utility from doing any more search, I can just do a Control-C. That brings me back to the prompt. And I can now go ahead and clear the terminal. And now I'm ready to do my Nmap scan. Now you can use either Nmap or you can use Zenmap, whichever one you prefer. The commands don't change. So I'm going to type in Nmap, follow that up by the IP address, -P, which means to scan for all ports. Then I'm going to give it a space and a small letter S and a capital V. I want to know about all the services and the operating system that's currently running on this target. Let's go ahead and just hit enter and begin the scan. So the scan has completed successfully. Let's take a look at what information we have learned from this enumeration process. So we have 3 ports open. I have port 22 running OpenSSH, and we have port 80 could be running HTTP, doesn't know, but we also have an Apache server running on port 1898. That's probably going to be our most viable target, but we're going to go ahead and check it out. Now, this version of SSH is not vulnerable at this time. That's fine. We're going to move on with the port 80. So to do this, we're going to open up a browser, and we're just going to type in the IP address. And that will bring up whatever web page is running. Now, once our browser does open up, all we have to do is type in the IP address of the machine, and it brings up this Easter egg here. So if you like, you can go ahead and you can view the source of this page, and that's just again the same Easter egg. So there's nothing useful that we can use here. So it's time to move on to the port 1898 and the Apache server and see what that yields. So we can close out the source, and I can just type in a colon followed by the port that HTTP is currently running on, port 1898, and I'll hit enter. So when I go to the HTTP running on port 1898, I am presented with this logon page for a client management system known as Drupal. Okay, so this isn't going to get us very much, and you can look at the source if you so desire, and there's not a whole lot in here either. There's no names, there's no passwords or anything that we can use. This is not going to yield us much information. Okay. Now, back over here, if I try to register and we can try that. And I'll just type in somebody's name here. And if I type in an email address and I hit enter, it's going to come back and it's going to display a couple of messages here. One is that it's unable to send an email because it doesn't have an email client or a way to send that email. And it says, thank you for applying for the account. Your account is currently pending approval by the site administrator. Okay, so that's about as far as we're going to get with this attempt to log on to the CMS known as Drupal. Now we know from the formatting of this particular web page that it's running Drupal. So what we're going to do now is we're going to run derp. So with derp we can look for any existing or hidden web content, and we can find this by using a brute force attack, and then we can take our time analyzing the results and see what else might be hiding on that Apache web server. Alright, so we're going to go ahead and minimize this. Let's go ahead and clear the terminal here. Hit enter. Now we're going to run derp. So I've typed in derp followed by the HTTP, the IP address, and what port I want to look at. And let's see what derp comes up with. The directory structure confirms that it is Drupal that is currently running on our target machine. And that's all good and well. I've gone through and I've checked most of these directories. I've looked inside of them. There's nothing there. So that's kind of a waste of time. So what we need to do now is go ahead and see if we can get some more information about Drupal with a Nikto. Again, down here, we're going to go ahead and clear the screen. Alright, so the command that we're going to use for Nikto is just Nikto space dash host followed by the HTTP and the IP address and the port number that we want Nikto to scan. Let's see what it finds out here. So it's finding some information about the version of the Apache server, and it's finding out some good information about some other directories and such that are currently running on there. But we know this from our previous scan, so we're not learning a whole lot here. Let's go ahead and make this full screen, see what else we got here. So we found out that Drupal is currently using version 7, but we need the exact versioning of this application. So we're going to go on back over to our web server, and we're going to look at something called the changelog.txt file that comes with Drupal. Now this is a default file that is readily accessible with Drupal, and this is another thing that makes it so vulnerable. Let's go ahead and bring back up our web browser, and now we're going to type in, we're just going to type in changelog.txt, and it tells us that the actual version for Drupal is 7.54. Okay, that's good information. So that's what we need to know. So 7.54 is the actual version of Drupal that is currently running on that machine. So what we're going to do now is look for a exploit that we can run against this particular version of Drupal. So let's go ahead and minimize our web browser. Let's bring back up our terminal. Let's go ahead and clear the screen. We have all the information we need from this. And now let's go ahead and run Metasploit. So I'm currently running the latest version of Metasploit. Now what we're going to do here at this prompt is we're going to conduct a search for Drupal. So I'm going to type in search. And what I'm looking for is any available exploits for Drupal and see which ones we can run against our target machine. So I'm going to type in Drupal, and now remember this is case sensitive and it does have a capital D. So here are the exploits that are available for Drupal. Now the one we want to concern ourselves with is this one right here. That's the one we want to use, because that's the latest one. So we're always going to go with the latest and the greatest, and it is rated as excellent. So we know that using this particular exploit is going to allow us to establish a reverse shell and a metapredator session over with our target machine. So I want to use this. So the command that I'm going to type in here at the prompt is use. And what I've done is I've copied the name of the exploit, just like this. And I'm going to follow that up with a space down here after the word use. And I'm going to right click and I'm going to paste. Now I'm going to hit enter. And notice that my prompt changes to let us know that we're currently using this exploit. So now that we have determined which exploit we're going to use, we should do a show options to see which options we have to configure. We have to configure two options here. We have to configure the remote host IP address, and then we also have to configure the actual port, the remote port that we're going to be using. Alright, so let's go ahead and do this real quick. So to set the IP address for the remote host, we just use the set command. So it's just set space followed by the option, which is our host, followed by the IP address of the target machine. Let's go ahead and hit enter. Notice that the prompt comes back letting me know that that option has been set. So the next thing we're going to configure is the remote port. Again, we're going to use the set command along with the option, our port, followed by the actual port number that Drupal is actually running on. So we know that's running on port 1898. So all we have to do now is hit enter, and it comes back letting us know that that option has been configured. So those are the only two options we need at this time. Now you can do a show options again, and you can confirm your settings. There's our remote host, and there's our remote port. We're good to go. We're now ready to connect to our remote host using a reverse shell and a metapredator session. Now to do this, all I have to do is type in the word exploit and hit enter. So now that we have a reverse shell established with our target machine, we need to get into the command shell. Now to do this, we just use the shell command and we hit enter, and you'll notice that the prompt comes back but there's nothing displayed. That's normal. Alright. The next thing you can do is type in ID to see who you're logged on as. Currently we are logged on to the remote host with the www-data account. This is very limited. We only have a few commands that we can run with this limited prompt. The next thing that we can do is run a piece of Python script that's going to give us a more interactive prompt with our target machine. Now this particular script is just Python. It's a very small script, but it's very common so that we can have a interactive prompt so we can run a lot more commands than we can with the limited access that we currently have. So we're going to go ahead and hit enter with this. Now notice that my prompt changes to let me know that I have an interactive prompt. Now we can type in uname space dash small letter A so that we can actually see what version of the Linux kernel we're currently running. Hit enter. It comes back letting us know that the version of the kernel is 4.4.0-31. It's currently running a version of Ubuntu 14.04.1. Now up inside of the etc directory on the remote host is a file called issue. And we can take a look at that to get some more information about what version of the operating system we're currently running on the target. And it tells us that it's running 14.04.5, and that's what we need to know, because this is the information we're going to need so that we can actually gain root access to this install, this remote install of Ubuntu. So in our next video, in video 3, we're going to take off and do some exploiting and work on using what information we've gathered from this interactive prompt with the target and metapredator to find an exploit that we can run against the target to gain root access. See you in the next video.